What's the most weird/terrifying confession you've heard from someone that was drunk? Bartender here. So many stories. Probably most terrifying is the woman who came into my bar years ago and had 2 shots and a drink and was real quiet for the first hour. Then she called me over and asked if I could call the police. I said what was the problem. She then told me that she had just stabbed and sliced the neck of a mugger in the alley and wanted to make sure he was dead first before she reported it. Note: police were called, mugger found dead, woman not arrested or charged. She denied ever telling me that she wanted to wait an hour before calling the police, claimed that she had passed out in the alley and woke up, then came into the bar in shock. My friend drunkenly told me his mother molested him when he was a kid, and I am the only person who ever knows. Instantly understood why sometimes he doesn't want to be at home alone with his mom at times. That they steal money from passed out drunk hookups. That's the last time this person came to hang out at my place. My ex-boyfriend told me one night, he moved here from Vietnam when he was 14, that his cousin is a gay prostitute and would fly to Hong Kong periodically to make bank. He'd slip something in his John's drink at the bar to make them go to sleep just before heading to the hotel room. They'd get to the hotel room, John would end up falling asleep, he'd empty out the wallet and take off. My friend through 20 years broke down in the middle of a bar and told me, a guy from our high school class raped her at a party in 10th grade, and none of us heard her cry from the room upstairs. This happened to me once. By 3 to 5 dudes at once. Still haven't told anyone. I'm too scared not to be believed. I think it's my scariest memory. It still gives me panic attacks if I think of it and don't immediately distract myself with different thoughts/actions. I'm so sorry you had that experience. I believed her right away. She wasn't a liar. I'll never understand how she could show up in school Monday morning and pretend everything was as always. Looking back, I remember her being late that morning, and she couldn't keep eye contact with people, but 16-year-old me didn't connect such heavy dots, until she told me years later. Once, a dude wearing a Tigger costume walked into a Halloween house party I was in. It was like 4 a.m. so we were all already smashed. He sat on my lap and tried to convince me that I am a trans guy, omni, and should transition and date him. Then he told me in detail how he violently hates his mom and exactly how he would like to murder and dismember her. He then also tried to convince me that I hate my mother, I do not, and I should kill her. When I said no, he yelled at me, left through the front door and threw himself down the stairs. He was fine. I work at a bar and our staff had a huge problem with heroin a couple years ago. It was to the point that management was regularly having to sweep the bathroom for needles. Anyway, one of the guys was a friend of mine and I thought he was an overall good guy despite his crippling addiction. One night we were having a few drinks after work and he got a little too drunk and admitted that a couple months prior he had bought stuff from someone he didn't know and didn't trust, so he called up a girl he'd used with before and told her he had stuff and could he come over. He let her go first and she immediately had a terrible reaction to whatever was in the drugs, seizing and oating in front of him. He left her house without notifying the police or trying to help. He ought himself a couple months after. I have about 4 heroin addicts in my extended family. You can't trust anything they say, ever, unless you're 100% sure they're clean. It doesn't mean you don't love or care for them. It doesn't mean you don't look out for them in ways that you're able to, but addiction turns people into sociopaths. They don't care about you, they care about feeding their addiction. Whenever a person with an addiction problem talks about getting clean, you just need to take it at face value. It's talk. Saying that you want to get clean doesn't beat addiction, that takes discipline and commitment. A cousin who I grew up with, a guy who is like a brother to me, lied to me last year about his car breaking down to try and get $500 from me. He's in jail for stealing people's credit cards now. It's sad. My male best friend at the time confessed me while drunk that he wanted to abuse my female best friend and that just the idea of it made him hard. Since the only way to get to her was with my help, he insisted that it would be great for us 3 to go to a separate room. We were at a party. He said that while he was with her I could either watch or join them, since I was also pretty freakable, of course. I told him to go to hell. I grabbed my best friend and we both left the party. Needless to say, I broke ties with him and he can't get close to us. The 3 of us were 17 at the time. Not me, but a friend. He was out with a girl he didn't know too well and they got drunk. She said she was initiated into a gang. They just collected stray people they didn't know, took them to a warehouse, beat them up, and when they were thoroughly beaten/broken down, she and the other recruits administered an overdose of heroin, killing them. There are weird people out there, you need to be careful. That's fine, but I see it says motorcycle gangs. Makes sense. This girl was a stripper, didn't have just a lot going for her, and I doubt it was a motorcycle gang. In Illinois, we're plagued with generic gang activity that usually originates from Chicago and is infecting central Illinois, Peoria, Bloomington. Normal. No motorcycles, just death, violence, and scum. The police aren't doing much to stop its spread. Not long ago, my friend was outside for a smoke at a small house party, and a girlfriend of a mutual friend came up to him and decided to let him know that she had gotten an abortion earlier that week. She didn't even introduce herself, just went straight to that. This is a doozy. I was about 22 and went out drinking with my coworker who was the same age. We're both women, and she asked me if I ever looked at porn. I said sure. She said she'd stumbled across some child pornography and it confused her because the kids looked like they enjoyed it. So she looked up more to find out if it was really so bad. I freaked out, and tried to explain that it was illegal to look at, and that children can experience sexual pleasure while being damaged. She clearly thought she was just innocently researching the subject, and didn't seem to understand why I was so upset. An older coworker we both liked and trusted explained the same thing to her. I have no idea if she was a pedophile, or just didn't get why looking at child pornography for any reason is bad. Outside of law enforcement. 10 years later, I'm still wary of coworkers. Some things you're better off not knowing. Was on leave from the army with some mates and met a fellow from an adjacent unit. We all proceeded to get good and drunk when the fellow from the other unit told us about how he fabricated an after-action report because he had killed a local and reported that he felt threatened. We discussed it the next day when sobering up and ran it up the chain of command. Turns out he never actually did what he claimed to do, but was probably thinking about it and described his plan to us in a way that made it sound like he'd already done it. About 2 weeks later, Scuttlebutt said that he was quietly sent to another base for reasons. My parents were both drunk, and got in a fight which escalated their emotions apparently, and my stepdad had a mental breakdown due to the situation and came in my room to vent about it, and basically admitted to me that when he was 16 he got a girl pregnant and they had my stepbrother, and choked her during an argument. She didn't press charges because her mother said don't ruin his life over it, so that's how he got away with it. After that he started talking about how he's actually killed people and how he's really about that life, spent his teenage years hustling and selling drugs and never got caught 'cause he had a fake it or some shit. All the years I've known this guy we barely talked, and he threw all this at me one random night where I barely knew what was going on. Lol. I was an accident. Usually my mam says like, oh, I always wanted kids and wanted to get pregnant young. But nope. During a wine-filled rant about life she revealed I was, in fact, an accident. I kinda figured, she was 17.